Welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast, where thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives from around the world share their practical tips, strategies, and stories to help you unleash your potential and achieve your goals. Your journey of growth to become your best starts now.
Hey, welcome back to the Rise Up For You podcast. Before we jump in, if you haven't already, wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching it, if you're watching it on YouTube, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We have no advertisement or sponsorship on this show. All we ask is that you subscribe to our content, you like it, and you share it with your friends and your family. We're all about building community and sharing our content here at Rise Up For You. All right, are you ready? Let's jump into today's episode with yet again another amazing guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rise Up For You podcast. This is your host, Netta Lena Nasruddin. I'm super excited to bring today another amazing guest, thought leader, entrepreneur. And I've actually had the pleasure of meeting this guest today. We've spent some time together as friends, hanging out in the Las Vegas community. Shout out to everyone in Las Vegas. But I'm super excited to bring to you today, Lorraine Lindsey. Hi, Lorraine. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Excited to be here and finally get on your podcast. I'm super excited.
Yes, I'm super excited to have you and to dive in and get a little bit more deep today in today's show and podcast. So I always love to start the episode by letting the audience get to know our guest. And I always pass it over to our guests to kind of brag a little bit. Tell us in your own words what you do, how you do it, and where you got to where you are today.
Super. Well, I'm Lorraine Lindsey, affectionately known as Coach Lolo or Coach Lorraine Lindsey. I have been a peak performance and personal development coach since 2014. So this is my 10th year in the coaching space. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. It's been 10 years. I've been trained by Tony Robbins organization. I'm certified through them. I'm also certified as a certified practicing life coach. I've trained in NLP and some other modalities. But I do focus a lot on peak performance. In the earlier stages of my career, it was mostly for relationships and self-confidence and self-love. But just like my business has grown, I'm now transitioning into more business coaching other coaches, because that seems to be what my old clients are actually looking for and needing. A quick little background on me. I was actually an EMT in Las Vegas with a local ambulance company for 10 years. I was also a top executive director for player development in the casino world, where I traveled the entire world, reaching out, seeking, headhunting the top gamblers for casinos. And for me, which is part of what I coach on, is there was a burnout stage. There was a time when that career, although it was lucrative, I had those golden handcuffs, and I had to really work hard to transition out and follow, instead of provision, purpose. And so I coach people on that, not just because I've learned it from a few books, but because it's quite literally the steps that I have to take to be where I'm at today. So. Yeah.
And I love what you just said. That last part is not because you learned it from a book, but because the strategies that you are teaching and sharing, you've actually used and experienced yourself.
100%.
To get to where you are. And I think that is so important, because this is not to knock anyone, by the way, because everybody out there is doing their best to grow and make an impact.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people that are trying to coach and lead other people without really doing it themselves, without coaching themselves, without understanding the strategies, reading a couple books and then trying to apply and implement. So I think it's important. I always say, if you're going to look for a coach or find a coach, find one that's done what you want to do. They've already achieved it, and they've used the strategies themselves, and they have a proven track record. So I think that's super important. I want to dive a little bit more into the performance aspect. It's interesting because here at Rise Up For You, for those of you that are new to the podcast, our whole focus is on the academic term soft skills. Okay. But what that really is, in simple terms, it's all the high performance skills that were never really taught, that the 1% to 3% of the population have and are achieving major success in their whole life, not just in one area, because they've cultivated these soft skills or these performance skills. It's all the things that were never taught that you're talking about, the self-confidence, right? Resilience, mastering your mindset, being able to manage your emotions, influence people, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
I'm curious for you, and every day we're trying to, influence people to recognize the importance of these skills before it's too late. I'm curious for you, when was that aha moment for you? Were you like, did you always have it? Or was there a time when you recognized, hey, I could have all the degrees in the world. I could have all these certificates, but these are the skills that are going to be a game changer for my life?
I think it's a great question. And I think that this is something that I really strategically focus on when I'm coaching people, because mindset is probably the key element to everything. It's like if you have limiting beliefs and you have things that are blocking you, then it doesn't matter the skills that you're taught, because you'll be, fire on ice, as they call it. You'll just kind of sit and overlearn and overwhelm yourself because you're kind of aimlessly trying to figure it out, when really it stemmed from mindset. And I think when I started coaching, I actually got into the relationship space because I was struggling in my own relationships and reading books and learning. But I realized that in order for you to add skill, because it's super, super, super important. And one of my aha moments for me was that thinking is such a quality that we have as human beings. It's what separates us from animals, but the quality of your thinking is what's important. And sometimes we have these blind spots and these things that we're not even aware of, that inhibits us from having that quality thinking. But I feel like skills, learning the skills, saying, if this is the thing that I want to do with my life, whether it's relationships, whether it's a business, whether it's fitness and wellness, you have to learn the skills so your quality of thinking is improved. So that way that crazy thinking doesn't have as much control. So I think that understanding your limiting beliefs, but also training yourself the skills to be mindful of what those limiting beliefs are, really helps get you moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I love what you just said there at the end, is training yourself to be mindful, because everybody has negative thoughts. I don't care what anybody says. Tony Robbins, Oprah, all the amazings, all the greats that are in this industry that are achieving massive success. Everybody has negative thoughts. I mean, neuroscientists show that 80% of our thoughts are negative on a daily basis.
Right.
But just like you said, it's being mindful of it and then learning how to manage it so that it doesn't sabotage you, but that it can potentially serve you.
Right.
And I think sometimes people think they're alone with their thoughts. They think they're the only one that has imposter syndrome, or the only one that struggles with fear that cripples them from taking action. But they're not alone. And I have thoughts, you have thought, we all do. So I'm curious for you, how do you work? It's a big question, but what are the first few steps that you just start to kind of work through with your clients to help them even just become self-aware to the fact that they have these thoughts that might be conscious, that are potentially destroying their ability to move forward in a career, or their ability to have a loving relationship, or their ability to start that side hustle or that job that they've always wanted? What are the first few things you have to do there?
But the first thing I do, and I learned this from a course that I took when I was training and whatnot, is I understood that you know what you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know. And those are your blind spots. And so usually what I will do first is I just kind of let a person unpack their bags. Just tell me your story. Tell me why you're here. Let me hear what you want, what you need, what you desire, and what you think is actually holding you back. And I just kind of let them unpack their bags. And usually what I'll do is I'll take 1 to 2 sessions of just kind of listening to them. And here's what I'm looking for. I'm listening for patterns, these limiting belief conversations that they're saying that they don't even realize that they're saying, whether they're victim or victor, whether they are people pleasers. So I'm looking for all these little subtle clues that they may not have cognitively brought to the forefront. And then what I do is I start to take those things and almost like organize them. It's like, okay, we unpack the bags, the shirts go over here, the pants go over here, and so on. And so we start to look at that, and not for me to tell them this is what I see, but to introduce a kind of conversation to say, okay, well, what I've heard you say was this. Tell me what that means. So for an example, if someone were to say, I don't want to be alone doing this. I feel like I'm all by myself. I feel like I don't have any help. I feel like I'm overwhelmed because I'm the only one doing this thing. I'll want to kind of know more about that. Or if someone were to say, I'm a people pleaser. I try to do what everybody wants and that kind of thing. Again, digging deep. Well, why is that? What's going on? Because a lot of times what's happening with people is they're treating their life based on symptoms, right? So the people pleasing is a symptom to an actual problem. The weight is a symptom to an actual problem. The snots, the procrastination is a symptom. And usually when we dig deep and we get down to the layers, everybody's issue boils down always to one of three things. It's either they're struggling with being enough, they're feeling like they don't belong, or they actually feel like they're alone. And so it's asking the questions of what are the things that you do in your life that identify with that label? What are the things that you're telling yourself that makes that your mantra? When someone tells themselves they're not enough and they believe that subconsciously, they start to act out those behaviors and they don't even realize it. So then it's like, okay, now that we've discovered this thing, how do we create ways to reframe it for you? And so ways to do that is like, okay, well, what would being enough look like? How does a person in your eyes look like, or what are the things that they do? And how do we build that skill? How do we practice being enough? Because we're never fully going to ever feel like we are. But again, going back to that mindfulness, if I can practice the skill, if I can identify more with that skill, then that's when you start to connect dots and you start attracting different kind of things into your life, because now you're shifting your focus.
Yeah, I can tell that you do, because we have other coaches on here sometimes and the response is not as logical or in depth. And I always say that your behaviors are dictated by your beliefs.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we don't know what the belief is. It's just the behavior that's coming out, right? Not being able to commit, not raising your hand in a meeting, maybe being a little bit more aggressive or assertive than needed to. We don't really know why that behavior is happening.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, especially in the self-help world, there can be a lot of shaming on social media, like if you can't get out of bed at 4 a.m. to work out, or if you're not doing this, then you don't want it bad enough. But sometimes people really do want it, but they don't understand what the resistance is before the action, right? It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you don't want to achieve success. It's that there's some kind of emotional resistance that's preventing you from taking the action. And you said it beautifully. We got to be able to break that down and build that self-awareness and self-management. I'm curious for you, because I have my own process, but when you are in moments like this with yourself, where you have a limiting belief or self-doubt, how do you coach yourself? Because I think coaching yourself is a skill on its own.
Yeah, totally. And, it takes practice, but I think the biggest thing for me is that I've just given myself an incredible amount of grace. And I think that we're so hard on ourselves. And we think that, like, for example, with fear, we act like fear is something that we have to fight and conquer, like it's this mighty dragon. And what I like to say is that your fear is this inner child that's in you, the part of you that first developed this idea of not being enough. All of these feelings we had are adolescent or youthful feelings that we cultivated at some point in our lives. And so it's like, if I start to feel afraid, if I'm not thinking and I'm not being mindful of it, it'll start to run my life like it is me. And there are times when I'm being triggered emotionally, and I have to catch myself and say, wait a minute, hold on, take a pause, take a breath. That just triggered you, that upset you. Why? What is the little kid inside of you afraid of? Now, I can't get rid of the little me, nor would I want to, because she's an important part of my life. And so instead of conquering and slaying the dragon, it's almost like getting down to its level and simplifying and saying, okay, I'm sorry I wasn't listening. What is it that you need? Because that's how we have to, in my opinion, need to treat our fears. Like there are little kids inside, because truly that's what they are. So for me, I'll have moments where I'm just like overwhelmed and I'm just like, everything's coming at me at the same time. And what I've tried my best to do, and I don't always execute it perfectly, is number one, be honest with myself. Lorraine, what are you really, really upset about? What are you afraid of right now? And giving myself some of the reassurance, kind of reflecting and remembering other times in my life when I felt the same and I came through. Sometimes we have to check in with how far we've come, and we don't do that often enough. And there are days literally where I'm like, today is a bad day for me. I'm going to own it. I'm going to own my bad day. I'm going to give myself until midnight. I'm going to wallow, feel sorry for myself. I'm going to be all of the things, eat the cake, whatever I want to do. And then I'm going to get back up and get on the grind. Because sometimes you just have to give that thing to you so you can release that energy.
Yeah, I love that. So while you're talking, I'm asking myself, okay, is this person, is Lorraine built this way, born this way, always been like this? Or was there a pivotal moment in your life where you recognized, okay, I have to master my mindset and I have to really start to tap into this? Like, were you always like this, or was there a pivotal moment in your life where you started to really tap into these, I call them superpower skills, because I truly believe they are?
It's a great question. And there's not one specific pivotal moment, but I did come from very humble beginnings. I lived in a homeless shelter as a child. I lost a parent, unfortunately, to suicide, and went through a household that was very violent, a lot of domestic violence. And I left home at 16 and became a mother at 17. So my brain was always in this survival mode. It was always trying to figure out a way to survive. Now, for me, for whatever reason at that time, especially when I had my son, there was this shift, probably that big first paradigm shift in my life, because I gave birth not only to my son, but I gave birth to a compelling why. Me becoming a mother was this thing of like, and again, I wasn't conscious about it. So I was aimlessly doing things, but my success started out by leveraging my pain. And it wasn't like I had these happy moments and whatever. I was leveraging pain. I had a compelling why that said life has to be different for me and for him. And I was so compelled by that I made change. Now, when those changes came and those successes came, at some point I had to get rid of the pain, because it served me to get there, but it wasn't serving me to progress. And I think in that moment for me is when I was like, okay, I know this pain isn't serving me. So it was the curiosity and the kind of like the almost burnout of the pain. Like, I'm tired of feeling this way. And that's when I started seeking. There's got to be a way to overcome this. And I started looking. I was more mindful of what I was watching. I was more mindful of the people I was talking to. And nobody was necessarily guiding me, but I could just feel better when the person spoke of hope instead of negativity. I felt better when something was saying you can do it. And it actually got to a point in my life where it was like, okay, I get it. Now what? It was like, and I always say that it's like, there's those moments where you learn so much and you get it. And then you're like using it almost like a drug. You're just constantly tuning into something, but you're not actionable. And so that was another pivotal step in my moment where I was like, okay, I'm learning all this stuff. I'm getting all this self-help. I'm doing all these things. But why do I feel more dark, more depressed, and more in pain? And again, it was that limiting belief, because I didn't believe I was enough. I felt like I was an imposter, and I was still operating in that system, even though I was on the outside doing all the resourceful things. And so again, once I had that pivotal switch in my mind to say, oh, the reason why the self-help isn't actually helping is because it's based on me looking for confirmation of continuing this pain. And so it's just been an ever-going progress that I still have setbacks on, and my little girl pops up, and I try to like do all the things, but I'm rambling at this point. But those are some of the moments. There's been a lot of pivotal moments of me kind of checking in, and I wasn't always super aware, but I was aware that progress was taking place.
Yeah, that was a great ramble. You can ramble as much as you want. You said something that's really, really important, and I use this comparison sometimes, that there's people that are resilient, that can get back up, right? Mm-hmm. They survive their circumstance, they're resilient, they get up, they move forward. But then there's only a special few, I believe, that not only get back up and are resilient, but then they use that pain to move forward in a way that helps them be not only more successful just with their career and life, but also in their mind. And you said something that's really critical, that you recognize that your pain got you to a certain point. You're like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm making money. I'm building success. But you had that self-awareness to recognize, but now I need to dump the baggage to get to the next point where I actually feel loving and self-confident and enough in the inside. And that step is missed. And I see that you and I were both in a space where we're around a lot of entrepreneurs and influencers. I know that we have a similar community, but I don't know we see that second step. There are a lot of people that have achieved success. They've used their pain as fuel for growth, but there's still a ton of darkness and unhappiness and, just a lot of dark pain inside that hasn't been resolved. And, sometimes I wonder, okay, if they lost the business or the job, God forbid, or all the nice, fun external stuff, what's going to happen to them? And most people are going to come crashing down because they didn't do that step B that you talked about.
It's very true. As a matter of fact, I'm traveling, been blessed enough to travel next week to go to Kansas City, actually to speak with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
And the players, and one of the conversations that they asked me to have with the team, here we are, these athletes who have made it to their summit, right? You're climbing a mountain and they're at their ultimate peak, but their identity construct is connected to their athleticism and to their performance and to what they do on that side. And so sometimes we see people in those kind of limelights and we wonder, why is it that in other aspects of their life, they are falling apart, they're blowing all their money, or maybe there's circumstances that are happening that just doesn't make sense. Now, that's a grandiose example, but we all do this in our day-to-day lives where we are trying to obtain this thing called being enough by tying it to an identity construct, saying, if I hit this look, if I am beautiful enough, if I make this much money, if I have this kind of status to my life, then people will perceive me as being enough. And the reality is, a lot of times when we hit that point, we actually feel more imposterous, and we feel more like we need to prove ourselves, because now we have to maintain that status. And it's a good point that you make about people who are motivational speakers and coaches. I mean, I love them all and I love what they're trying to do. But I think that, at least for me personally, there is a responsibility that we have in this space to be very true and honest about our journey, about what healing really looks like. And I think that a lot of people, they really feel more comfortable with the fluff because healing is painful at first. It requires you to unearth things that you just want to put to bed. And until you deal with those things, there will always become these subconscious limiting beliefs that will hold you back. And that's regardless of whether or not you superficially succeed in life. I can tell you that in my corporate world, I was making a ton of money. I had a very sexy and glamorous job. And in the end, I realized that I was incredibly successful at being mediocre, because I wasn't living my fullest life, my fullest potential. So I was making money. Everybody saw all my shiny objects, but inside there was just heaviness and darkness because I wasn't happy. But I built that success with trying to be independent, trying to prove myself, all of these labels that I was trying to prove so people didn't really see who I really was. And when I coach people now, when they come to me, they say, I really am looking for change. And I tell them, you don't need to change. What you need to do is you need to cultivate. There is a seed in each and every one of us, an apple seed, if you will, right? That apple seed has the potential to be a sprout, a plant, a tree, a fruit, or an orchard. And not everybody's goal is to be an orchard, but an apple seed will never be an oak tree. And a lot of us are trying to be things that we're not. And it's about, when do we tap into the essence of who we are, remember who we are, and cultivate that. So that way, this feeling of abundance and being enough is from within, instead of tied to all of these identity constructs that we're trying to go after and exhausting ourselves just to make other people happy. So again, I'm rambling, but I get very passionate about that kind of stuff.
No, this is all really amazing. When you were talking, I'm gonna send this podcast when it releases live on air to. We just finished a program at a school district in California where some of the Rise Up For You team were working with youth that are 13 to 18 that are underrepresented, or they've had really tough backgrounds. And we just finished a program teaching them confidence and emotional intelligence.
Love that.
A lot of them just got out of juvie and are homeless and trafficked and really struggling. And I think that this is very influential, not only for adults and professionals, but I think also for youth. They need to hear this, because it doesn't matter who you are, what your age is. Sometimes you're in it, like right now. You might be listening to this podcast and you're in it right now, and you can't see anything but darkness.
Right.
You can't, like, the possibility of being something else or something more is just not existent. So in your mind. And so I think this is so beautiful. This is a great interview. I really appreciate you. I'd love to jump into the power section with you, Lorraine. So just a couple rapid fire questions for you. So question one is, if you were to leave this world tomorrow and you only had one final message, I call it the golden nugget. What would your golden nugget be?
Oh, there is never, ever going to be another you. There was never a you before you. There will never be another you after. The only responsibility you have to your life is to be the best version of yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
And here at Rise Up For You, we're very big on values. We always say, like, we have values that are non-negotiables. What's a value for you that is just absolutely, you're going to stick with it?
Integrity. I will never, ever compromise my integrity. It is the most important thing to me in all of the work that I do.
I love that. And I have one more question for you. But before I ask, tell the audience where they can reach you, your social media, your website, anything at all. Tell us all about how we can connect.
Great. So you can find me anywhere at Coach Lorraine Lindsey. So any one of the platforms. I'm a lot of my podcast. So you can see a lot of the clips on TikTok and Instagram. My website is www.coachlorrainelindsey.com. And I actually have a few upcoming events that people are joining waitlist for, just to kind of see which one I need to launch first. So look out for that too. I'd love to meet everybody out there.
Awesome. Okay, we'll make sure we put those in the show notes for everyone as well. And final question for you, Lorraine. Again, this has been an amazing podcast episode. As you know, we're the company Rise Up For You. What comes to mind for you when you hear that phrase?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's such a powerful statement. I think that needs to be people's mantras for themselves. Like, who else is going to rise up for you than you? And I feel like when you can say and decide, you may not know how, you may not know where to start, but just to rise up for you, for yourself, because you deserve that, because you are enough and you do belong and you're not alone. I think it's a powerful thing. And I think that everybody should be encouraged to rise up for sure.
I love that. Thank you so much. This has really been an amazing. I knew it was going to be great, but it was amazing, like beyond great.
Thank you for that. I'm just happy to be here. I think you're a powerhouse. When I first met you, I was like, this woman's energy. You have an authenticity about you, which I think is super, super important when it comes to coaching and stuff. And I wasn't even sure what exactly you did when I first met you, but I was like, I just want to know her. You just have something really amazing about you. So I'm honored to be here.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining the Rise Up For You podcast. Again, every single week, we are bringing you amazing thought leaders, executives, entrepreneurs from around the world that have one mission, and that is really to serve you and help you push your potential to be your absolute best, to help your team, your organization grow. So every single week, we're launching new episodes with great leaders. The Rise Up For You team comes on every now and then. We super appreciate you as a community, and I will see you next time. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Lorraine.
Bye. Thank you.